I have the pleasure of talking with First Sergeant retired Thaddeus Butler, a very, very quality soldier, but more importantly, a man with a heart of gold. When I had the pleasure to meet him or to read his personnel file, I found him to be an extraordinarily talented man. Many of the leaders that know both of us have spoke really highly of him because he's a problem solver, but more importantly, he's the most personable leader that I had met. And he was the first sergeant and leader for my son, DJ, my oldest boy. Became a very good friend of him. And matter of fact, they're still friends today.
Absolutely.
And that says a lot about a man's heart in my mind. That puts him in a special category in my book. That's the quality that I feel about this leader. And I'm looking so forward to talking with him. So without further ado, let's talk with Thaddeus.
Good to see you again, Sergeant Major. I really do appreciate this opportunity that you've given me to share my story. My name is First Sergeant retired Thaddeus Butler, and I'm from Bucksport, South Carolina. Joined the Army back in 1994 and retired in 2018 down here in San Antonio, where I live with my wife and my daughter.
So where do you want to begin?
Start from the beginning. It's a story. Let's tell it from the beginning. Grew up in a very small town in South Carolina. It's Bucksport, South Carolina. When folks ask me, okay, where is Bucksport? The only reference that I can give them is Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And now it's maybe 20 miles southwest of Myrtle Beach. We're still on the coast, but not as desirable as Myrtle Beach. Bucksport was a very small town. As I said earlier, that's where I got my morals, my values. Small town values, I think, is very important, especially when you're transitioning into things like the military, because you still come up as calling people sir and ma'am, and and just relating to certain aspects of loyalty and everything that comes with it. I went to high school at Conway High School, graduated, like I said, in 1994. Didn't really have an opportunity, didn't really have an idea of what I was going to be doing once I left that small town and joined the Army.
So tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Oh, earlier years, I'll tell you, hide and seek was great. We had a whole lot of cornfields that we could run through and dirt roads. And I remember when the first time my road was paved in the Bucksport. And we used to hang out at the corner store many a night. However, once the lights went off, we had to be in the house. So it was a race for freedom for the next day. If you didn't make it in the house by the time the street lights went off or came on, then you pretty much locked in for the rest of the week. The first person that was very influential to me was my mother. She passed in 2019. She taught me a great deal about patience. She taught me understanding. She taught me values that I carried forth to this day. My grandmother was also a very inspirational person. Well, she is still kicking. I call her every day and talk to her. But she was very influential. After my mother passed, she took on that role of grandmother /mother, which really meant a lot to me and my brothers. My aunt, Lisa, she's a gem. She's always the family advocate and getting things put together, like for holidays. Birthdays, you can get a text. We have a family group meeting. We have a text that says, hey, today's Thaddeus' birthday. Everybody call and do whatever you have to do. Just make sure that we acknowledge each other. And that's something that the family, I believe, should do, is acknowledge those accomplishments when it comes to, seeing another year, watching the boys play baseball for their team, and everything like that.
Some say mentors, some say counselors, school teachers, but I love it when we focus on family. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That was cool. Tell me about one of the best experiences in your life.
Well, the best experiences in my life, I'll tell you, was joining the military. When I joined the military, I really didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do with my life. And looking at it, I think I may have followed my brother and my cousin, who retired back in 2015 from the Navy. And we had a conversation just recently as we were sitting outside of under the sun here in San Antonio. And he was saying that he really didn't understand how we got to where we was. He understand that we knew the influence in our life. He just didn't understand why we had such characteristic as young men and that we brought into the military and that just shaped us in a way that that made us successful. I mean, we started comparing stories about, this event, that event, and we just don't understand. And he asked me, he said, is it the environment that we grew up in? Is it the people that we were around? Or is it because we just have this ability to pull out what needs to be pulled out when it needs to be pulled out? Being quiet and observing tends to be the best teacher whenever you're trying to share your thoughts on a particular event.
What are you passionate about? What gets your blood boiling?
What gets my blood boiling and what I'm passionate about is I'm a people person. And one thing that I can say is no one's worthless. Everyone has use and everyone has something to contribute to whatever it is that they want to do in life. And it's very important that people understand that. And I've dedicated my entire career in the military of pulling out things from people. A lot of people come into the Army just to, pay for college or do this and do that. And, and I can understand that. But at the same time, you still have a certain ability that you haven't tapped into yet. And I felt as though whenever I was a first sergeant, whenever I was pushing soldiers, that they weren't living up to their potential. They weren't going to school. They weren't doing this. They weren't doing that. But people is what drives me. It's a driving force because I want to see everyone succeed in their endeavors, even to tap into potential that you don't even know that you have. And I thought that it was my job. And I still to this very day believe that people are what drives me. Their success is fulfilling. I had one soldier that was whenever I was a corporal. And I remember she made Sergeant First Class before me. And a lot of folks came up to me and they were like, hey, Sergeant, aren't you like a bit disappointed that this soldier outranks you now? I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know why? It's because I know where she got it. I know where she got it from, and I know why she's wearing that rank.
Man, what a heart of gold, like I said. Hey, so I'm going to reach back into high school. Did you participate in any sports, or were you an actor, or you were a wallflower? What did you do?
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna tell you right now. I was a wallflower. I was a wallflower. No sports, no acting. Hey, I was the guy that was just sitting there making, making things work. Okay, I've never been a spotlight type of guy. I'm always a guy that pushes back. Even in high school, I was a guy that pushed from the back. And watching people succeed and helping people with their homework and just making sure that they were squared away. And I think that I was pretty popular with the kids in my neighborhood. I would hope so. But I'll tell you, high school I really didn't have an idea of what I was going to be doing once I finished high school, and that's probably one of the panic buttons that I had to push and try to figure out exactly where I wanted to be and where I wanted to do.
When I think about you, there's two words that comes to mind. Everybody matters.
Yes.
And that's how you lived. And that's how I saw you as a soldier. And now I see you as a contributing citizen in our society. 1994 happens. You're out of high school. Are we going to the military, or that was the only avenue you picked, or did you see other opportunities for yourself?
Well, I think that was the only avenue that I picked because my cousin, he joined the Navy. My older brother, he joined the Army. And me and my twin, we really didn't have an idea. So we just decided to say, hey, let's just give this thing a try.
So what were the early years in the Army for a 6'5" private?
Oh, it was 6'5", and I believe I was 170 pounds. Yes, I was one of those tall, lanky guys in the Army when I first came in. And it was just, so a lot of people just grabbed me by the hand and, and they helped, they shaped who I am today. They grabbed me by the hand, they walk with me, they talk with me. I remember one lieutenant, he whenever I was getting a reward, a PCS award, and he said that one of the main things that he remembered about me was whenever he used to come to the barracks and check on the soldiers in the barracks on during the weekend, he would tap on my door and he'd see me in there with a TM, learning. And I thought that was very important because in order to make sure that your things work, you really need to know how your things work. And I thought that I grabbed a hold of that, and I remembered him saying that at one of those, and I was totally oblivious to that he actually saw that, and I'll tell you, I had the best M12 in all of Fort Riley, Kansas. I'll tell you, when I touched her, she purred. I'll tell you, you know how hard it was to get those things started back in those days. But yeah, my early days were full of learning. Nice. I was still a wallflower. Didn't know anything about, outside of Fort Riley. I had an uncle there. He was in Sergeant First Class, and I used to go over to his home and, eat and talk and converse, all that stuff. And it was just so cold there. So cold. It's a beautiful, beautiful base. However, it is extremely cold. But the early years for me in the Army were rewarding. They taught me a lot. They taught me how to be a leader. When I made corporal, I thought that was the most beautiful thing on earth. Yeah, but other than that, hey, it was a very nice experience.
So when did you know you were going to stay 20 years?
I'll say that, between years 2 and 4. Whenever I did re-enlist, because I think I found my purpose, especially when it came to soldiers and, guiding them and leading them. I was a corporal, like I said, and around year 4 or 6, we were in the division artillery, and then we were moved over to the 1st Engineer Battalion, and I had this colonel who was very, very hands-on with people who he thought had potential, and I was one of those folks. My very first company commander, Captain Kroll, I'm not sure where he is today, but he was very influential. He almost stole me away from you, Sergeant Major. He wanted me to go green to gold. But at that time, I thought about it, and I just said, no, that's not my calling. So I just decided to stay with you guys.
I would have only been angry for a little bit, I promise. But I never would have saluted you. I promise you that.
I understand. Very first influential person that came into my life was my 1st Engineer Battalion commander. His name was Lieutenant Colonel Charles J. Fiala Jr. I remember, and I'm not sure if you've ever been to Fort Riley. Have you been to Fort Riley?
Okay. Yes, I have. In the winter.
It's very cold there in the winter. So we got out there, and it was range day, So I went out there, and I really didn't know this guy even took any type of interest in me. But, we went out there and we got on the range, and I shot 40, not 40 out of 40 at that time, but I shot like a 26, and I was happy. I was, hey, I qualified. So I jumped on the back of that deuce and a half, and, that thing started pulling off, and all of a sudden it lurched to a stop. I heard this voice, and he said, "Is Corporal Butler on there?" And they were like, "Yes, sir, he's right here." He said, "Well, tell him that he needs to get off." And I'm like, what do you mean I need to get off? I already qualified. I'm qualified. I got 26. He was like, "No, you need to get off." So I got off the truck and realized that was the battalion commander. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea that this guy was even noticed me. And he told me, and he pulled out his scorecard. He said, "Look, I haven't shot a rifle in 6 years. And if I can come out here and if I can get 40 out of 40, you can do the same thing." So he got out there, back then in the day, we used to have those paddles with the targets that's going to pop up next and all that stuff. And he got out there, he's like, 50, shoot it. 100, shoot it. 150, shoot it. 200, shoot it. 250, shoot it. 300, don't you shoot it, Because, hey, when you're at that point and you're on a roll, you're not shooting at the 300 meter target. Because, hey, you can qualify 250 and below with an expert. The towel came on and it was like, "No, sorry, he only got 34. And he was like, "Okay, well, bring him some more ammo." So I kind of figured that people took an interest at me at that time. And by the time I finally got expert, Sergeant Major, I'll tell you that you could shape the end of that barrel with a hammer because I shot that many rounds. Okay. And whenever I finally got that expert, he pulled me out of that foxhole and he told me, he said, "Look, you can do anything that you put your mind to. You can be whatever you want to be as long as you put your mind to it. And he said, whenever you get promoted to sergeant, you better not get promoted without me, So I was like, okay. So I got to work the next day. It wasn't like, a list posted or anything back in 1994 or 1997. But I got to work and they were like, hey, you getting promoted today? I was like, what? Nobody told me I was getting promoted today. They said, yeah, it's going to be at 9 o'clock formation. So my first question was, does the colonel know about that? I was like, what do you mean does the colonel know about that? Corporal, you get promoted today. I said, well, the colonel told me not to get promoted without him being there. So it was a pleasure for him whenever I went to the battalion and I sat on those steps and I waited for him to arrive. And he said, you know what? I was late on purpose. Because I was late on purpose because I wanted to see what you were going to do. So I knew you're getting promoted. Okay. So he put his hands around my shoulders. He said, okay, now let's go and promote you. So we get out there at the promotion ceremony and the company commander wanted to say some things. So he just snatched the rank out of the company commander's hands. And he was like, okay, I'll take it from here. And he started telling this elaborate story. So I'm going to tell you, your actions speak for you. Your actions speak for you. And a lot of soldiers, they ask me to this day, they said, First Sergeant, what do I need to do to get promoted? And I tell them, do your job. That's all you have to do is just do your job. There's no secret to getting promoted. All you have to do is stop expecting to get promoted and do your job. Your actions will speak for you. So he said this elaborate speech about me, and there's all things that were true that I really didn't take into account for myself. And I really did appreciate that. There are people that come into your life, much like yourself. I really do appreciate you, and I appreciate Chris Williams, and I appreciate Colonel Drool, for giving me the opportunity to be a first sergeant in that battalion. I know you were a driving force, and I really do appreciate it. Things don't happen for you when you want it to. It happens to you when you need it to. You can't teach leadership. Well, you can, but good leaders have traits that they learn over their life. Once you get to the military, you already have some type of leadership characteristics already instilled from your upbringing, from your environment in which you come from. I thought that, in my own opinion, it was very important for me to listen, not to fly off the handle just because Joe was late 3 times a week. Okay. Well, let's just find the root of why Joe's late. So why don't you bring the soldier into me and we're going to have a conversation. Okay. So now that conversation was, hey, Joe, what's going on? Why are you late? And he would tell me, okay, well, First Sergeant, I only have one car. My wife has to take the kids to school. She has to come home, pick me up and bring me to work, drop me off at work. Our schedules just don't match, And I said, okay, well, do you know that you have an obligation to be where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be there? And they'd be like, yes, sir. First Sergeant, I understand that. And I'm working on it. Okay. And at that time, that platoon sergeant, I'd look at him and I'd be like, okay, well, you're going to need to figure something out because the soldier belongs to you. I'm glad that they brought that to my attention, but it's just certain things that you need to do as a leader to figure things out. You're responsible for 12 people. Here I am responsible for 350 people. So figure out how we're going to get him to work. Okay. If you have to go and pick him up, then that's what you're going to have to do. If you have to delegate someone to go pick him up, then that's what you're going to have to do. But please do not bring your problems to me if you can solve them. I tell you, when I first took command, I had a meeting with the NCOs and I said, you're going to read. And they're like, what do you mean first? I said, you're going to read. Okay. You're going to read because the first time you come into my office and you ask me a question, I'm going to ask you, what have you done to figure it out? And if you tell me nothing, I'm going to send you back to the drawing board. And you're going to come back and you're going to tell me. And once you tell me what you've done, and I feel as though you've exhausted all of the resources, then of course I'm going to chime in because it's my job. You're responsible at certain levels for a certain amount of people. And if you're sitting here and you're asking me to give you all the answers, then what's going on? What's the problem? You should be cracking books like that young private back in 1994, 95 who was reading the TM in his barracks room whenever his lieutenant came in. Figure it out. You're not going to make a mistake. I tell them all the time, there's nothing that you can break that I can't fix as long as you're doing it right.
So let's follow up with a conversation in reference to impactful events in your life.
Some impactful events in my life would be first leaving the town that I grew up in. Back in 94, I never flew in a plane before. Get on that plane and saying, goodbye to family. and friends was very, very, it was a very emotional event. I was going into the unknown. I've heard so much about basic training and, and shark attack and all of that stuff. It was impactful because, it actually served a purpose in, breaking a person down, from where they were and expectations that they had to understanding that in order for you to learn, you're going to have to, be taught, especially whenever you come into an environment like the institution of the Army. I'm pretty sure you've had some experiences in your life, but I was a nobody, as you would say, whenever I joined the Army, and then the impactful events started to come to light when people actually saw that nobody actually had something to offer. From my very first sergeant, he started calling me Sergeant Major the minute I arrived. I'm not sure if you remember him. His name was First Sergeant Johnny Weaver. He was with the 12th Chemical Company, and my first commander was actually Colonel Retired Zumwalt. I know you know who that is. That was a very impactful moment, moving away from what I knew into an environment that I had nothing, no knowledge of, that I was sure to grow in, which I think that I did. That was an impactful event. The next impactful event was, when I got promoted to corporal and sergeant, going off to, PLDC and everything like that, learning some basics to tweak leadership and knowing that now I do have soldiers. There may have been 2 or 3 at the time, but there were some people that were counting on me to do the right thing and lead by example and take care of them. I believe that is very important once you receive soldiers. Like we always say, they're America's sons and daughters, to actually give them what they need to be successful. I started writing home to some of the soldiers' parents once I received them, and I let them know that, hey, I got your guy, okay? I got your guy, your guy's in good hands. Promise that I will do whatever it takes to make sure that your soldier is successful. On the other hand, if they don't want to be successful, then I'm probably going to end up sending them back home to you. Getting to know a lot of the senior NCOs and officers as my career progressed was a joy in and of itself. This one sergeant major, Fort Hood, he took over for the 48th Chemical Brigade, a little short fella, but I tell you, he could run like the wind. And he actually saw, the 62nd Chemical Company under 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment that was carrying a red and white guidon with 68 in the chem on, and he'd come running by and he'd say, hey, what are you guys doing out here? And he said, I didn't even know you guys were here. And after that, he started inviting us to all of his events. He'd call my office and say, hey, you got to come to this event. I don't want to leave you guys out in the dark. We're going to take care of you. You may be under that red and white guide on, but I'll tell you, you're still chemical. And I do appreciate Command Sergeant Major Moten for taking us under his wing and teaching and leading by example.
We're going to talk about a favorite story about a fellow soldier or just a situation in the military that brings a smile to your face.
Oh, I have one in particular, and he's still a project of mine. He's grown into a fine officer at this point. Still looking forward to see exactly how far he goes, and his name is Clavon Matthews. I think Chris Williams will be able to tell you a lot more about him because I told him that, hey, this guy right here is going to go places. He's going to be something. Clavon came to us around 2016 as my supply specialist. He was from Jamaica, he came straight from New York to basic training, and then he came to us there in Fort Bliss. And at that particular time, how hard it is to get soldiers to go to the board, so you're sitting there, you're pulling teeth about, okay, you need to go to the Soldier of the Month board, okay? But before you go to the Soldier of the Month board, you have to go through my board because I'm going to have to select people, and I kept getting the same people. So, I said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go down this alpha roster. And everybody that's specialist and below, you will have a date that you're going to go to the board. Okay. So that's what I did. And, I put every E4 and below on there, and I'd make sure that I check my leave tracker to make sure, hey, this joker ain't trying to slip no leave in on me when he's supposed to be going to the board. So we went through the list and we finally got Clavon. Clavon was a very quiet guy. He was great at what he did. And he came to my office the day of the board, and he said, first time, I don't believe that I'm going to be able to go to the board today. I said, no, your name is on the list, so you will be going to the board. Okay. And he was like, okay, well, I'll just do my best. I said, that's all I'm asking you to do. It's just to step forward and do your best. Okay. So once we got into this board, and Sergeant Major, I wish that you were a fly on the wall in this board. I mean, The guy he did his intro, again, like I said, he was very shy. People used to pick on the way how he talked and, this, that, and that, and the other, because he was from Jamaica. He didn't really have a strong American accent. So therefore he hit it. He was in the military. He hit his accent. He only talked to certain people. Once we started that board, and once he started going through his intro and his bio and where he came from, I'm going to tell you, Sergeant Major, it wasn't a dry eye in the place. Okay, because he went over everything that you could imagine that you'd want a soldier to say when it comes to an introduction. This thing wasn't scripted. It came directly from his heart. And at that particular time, I knew that this guy was really going to be something and a force to reckon with. So we get up to the battalion board and he blows it away. And at the end, Sergeant Major Riano, he came to me and he was like, getting prepared for the, brigade board. And I want the exact same outcome when it comes to the brigade board. So we went to the brigade board. I told Sergeant Major Williams, I said, hey, this guy's coming through. And I'm telling you right now, he's going to win this board. He said, well, you know what, First Sergeant, everybody tells me their soldier's going to win the board. And I said, well, everybody's not me. And I never told you that my soldier was going to win the board. And here's what I'm telling you right now, is that this guy is going to win this board. He's going to go forth and represent the 40th Chemical Brigade as the soldier of the quarter. And he was like, okay, well, we'll see. So we get in there. And again, he blows the board away. I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything was in place. The reason why I'm telling you the story is because people have potential. People have untapped potential, and that potential really needs to be pulled out of them. After he went to my board and after he did the battalion board, he got a bug and he knew what he wanted to do. He knew that he had a purpose. He knew that he was going to be a leader. And I still to this day talk to him and I explain to him that, hey, even though you're a leader, you still got to, pump your brakes a little bit and take things in. Okay. So again, he went up there. He didn't go to the brigade board, not the brigade board, but the division board, because he had OCS. We put an OCS packet for him.
Oh, nice.
So he went to OCS, pushed that. I flew down to Georgia, and I had the privilege of promoting him to lieutenant. And that was one of the most important things that I ever did in my career. I got Specialist Matthews, who was uncertain about his potential, really didn't know what his place was. And now he's leading soldiers. It was a great feeling for me. It still warms my heart to actually be able to invest in people and show them that, hey, you have potential. You can do it. All you got to do is put your mind to it.
Wow, that's a great story. Yeah. I'm really, really happy to hear that story. I don't know that soldier, but I will talk to Chris about him because I'm very curious about watching him in the future as well.
Oh, please ask Sergeant Major Williams about him. I still, I tell him all the time, see right here, I told you, this guy's going to do great things for the Army, even though it's not going to be on the enlisted side, but hey, we still need good officers.
With our remaining time, I'd like to open it up just a little bit and talk more about what you're doing now and what you see in the future. In particular, let's talk a little about your personal foundation. Some people say they're God-centered, family-centered.
Sergeant Major, like I said, I grew up in a very small town, and God was the focal point of our lives. I pray every night, no matter what time it is, if it's 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock the next day, I still find time to fall on my knees and thank God for the opportunities that he's given me with my upbringing, with my military career. Even though I don't think that I reached the fullest potential and contributed as much as I wanted to contribute, I believe that things happen for a reason. And through his, grace and mercy, I was able to do, 24 years. I was able to impact the lives of soldiers who I still keep in contact with today. My family is a very close second because they always kept me grounded. They always kept me level when it came to any type of problem. I know that I could always pick up the phone and call and ask for, some resources that I can use, to get through daily life, because you have your Army life and then you have your personal life. And as you say, you need to, be able to shut things off. Okay. And spend time with the family. So the family is super important. to me and to any NCO or any, member of the military, because they're the ones that you lean on. I think that it's very important to have that type of connection.
So I'm going to share something with you that I probably never told you. In 1968, I was a sixth grader getting ready to go to junior high. And I found a book in the library. It's called I Am Third by Gale Sayers. And Gale Sayers was my favorite at that moment, the favorite running back for the Chicago Bears. They used to call him the Kansas Comet. But the book is I Am Third, because he says, God is first, my family and friends are second, and then I am third. And it really had an impact on me, because I realized that somebody as famous and as talented as him can pray daily to God to help others before God helps him.
Yes.
Where are you going to be 5 years from now, brother? Where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, Sergeant Major. I am I'm a businessman. Okay. That's what I got my degrees in, and I thank the Army, because I got 4 degrees and I don't know anybody a dime. I had to put that plug in, just in case some young soldiers are going to be watching this thing, a little bit later on. So I am currently the president of a nonprofit organization called Guardians of the 22nd Chemical Battalion. We're just in infancy. We're still out there reaching out for some donations, and basically what we do is we support the battalion in morale events. We've also branched out, because the battalion command will be changing out here soon in June, but we branched out and we're going to be moving, hopefully, to expand what we do, not only to Fort Bliss, but also to where I'm at here in San Antonio. I got some legs in here at Lackland and Sam Houston. I'm trying to get some of these guys out here to actually, form a chapter of Guardians of the 22nd, so that we can start supporting units here, as well as Korea and all those other areas. So I think it's very important to give back. So in the next, 2 to 3 years, that's going to be one of our main focuses, is growing the organization and making sure that we have the right people in place to continue on with the legacy, just getting, young officers involved. I'm looking forward to how far this is going to go, as well as my own ventures. Like I said, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a businessman. So I'm looking at opportunities for myself in order to get into the things that I'm passionate about. Again, that people and early childhood development, especially for, the less fortunate communities, just to make sure that they have the resources that they need in order for them to be successful. And when they do go into, bigger and better institutions of learning, that they do have some type of scope on where they want to go and what they need to do, and they can be competitive with the folks that actually have these resources readily available to them.
What a good human being you are, brother. I said you were a leader with a heart of gold. You just validated my comment, so I can drop the mic right now. I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me, Dad. Let me just wrap this up with you with a comment that I shared about you with our mutual friend, Chris Williams, but I shared it with Daryl Hood as well, the General Hood, pardon me. I just said that there's leaders that come through your life at the right time of God's choosing that make you better. But then there's a leader that comes through your life that reminds you that the world doesn't revolve around you. It revolves around you giving. And you are that leader for me, my friend. And you are that guy that I am excited to talk with. I'm excited to hear what you're doing. I'm excited to contribute in any way I can. So please keep me in the loop and let me know what it is that I can do to assist you, because what you're doing is God's work. That's noble stuff you're doing, brother. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for spending and opening your heart. That's the capital, and you're giving it to us. And I really, really am thankful. I appreciate you.
Thank you for this great opportunity, Sergeant Major Moten, for this interview and being able to tell my story.